Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Otia. You can find me on Twitch or Twitter. Today, we're going to be talking about tanks, and this is my tank boot camp. Today, we'll be going over role actions, enmity, and some general tips and tricks. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is role actions. Role actions are unique to each role type. That would be tank, healer, or DPS class. When you're thrown into the world of Eorzea, you're not immediately hit with the notion of having a specific role type until your first dungeon at level 15, hence getting provoked at 15. Today I'm going to, hopefully, give you some tools to give you a bit more confidence when it comes to diving into the world of tanking in Final Fantasy XIV. The first of the role actions that tanks acquire is Rampart. It reduces damage taken by 20% for a duration of 20 seconds. The reduction in damage will most likely allow you to survive most tank busters. The best uses of Rampart would be to use this when you are tanking more than one enemy or preparing to take a tank buster. The next role action that you acquire is Low Blow. Low Blow is an instant cast that stuns the target for 5 seconds. You'll most likely use this to stop enemies from casting spells that can't be interrupted. At level 15, you'll get your most important role action, Provoke. Provoke allows you to taunt your target and place you at the top of the enmity list for that target. This could be used to change tank aggro, grab an enemy that is not currently aggro to you, or generate aggro against the target. In tandem with Low Blow, you will also have Interject. Interject will only interrupt casts that can only be interrupted. You will notice this because the bar is red. As tanks are one of the few that have an interrupt action, it is at your best benefit to have this bound to a key and ready to use at any time. One of the most beneficial role actions that tanks have is Reprisal. Reprisal is an instant cast that lasts 10 seconds and reduces all nearby enemies' damage by 10%. When using Reprisal, typically you would want to use this during a raid-wide or a group-wide attack from the boss. Another instance where you would use Reprisal is when you have many enemies around you and you want to reduce the damage that you take. This, in combination with other role actions like Rampart, will make it so that you are able to survive an onslaught of attacks. The next role action that we're going to be talking about is Arm's Length. Arm's Length makes it so that you are potentially safe from any knockback. There are some knockbacks in the game that cannot be mitigated by Arm's Length. The additional effect makes this such a unique role action. In addition to the knockback nullification, you are able to slow enemies that strike you. Because you are playing the role of a tank, this can also benefit you. When you're in a dungeon and you are pulling many mobs, a way to slow down the mob's attack speed and move speed is to use Arm's Length and slow their movement and their action speeds, which in turn allows you to take reduced damage. This, in combination with other role actions or other tank mitigation options, will increase your chance of survival. The final role action that a tank gets is called Shirk. Shirk is an instant cast that diverts 25% of the enmity that you generate to the target party member. This is used when swapping tanks. After a tank buster, the primary tank will divert all enmity to the off tank so that they become the primary tank. In order to do this, the off tank will provoke while the main tank shirks the off tank. This effectively swaps the enmity. Now that we've covered role actions, you've probably been wondering, what is enmity? Enmity is Final Fantasy XIV's version of aggro. You generate enmity by doing damage or casting healing actions. There are some actions that also increase enmity gain just by using them. When you have green enmity, you have no enmity on this target. When you have yellow enmity, you have very little and are building enmity on this target. When you have orange enmity, you have the second highest enmity on that target. When you have red, you are the primary point of enmity for this target. Now we'll move into tips and tricks. Tip number 1. Turn on your tank stance. Sometimes your tank stance will reset when you enter a dungeon, so make sure you have it turned on before you begin pulling mobs. Tip number 2. In dungeons, pull more than one group at a time. Typically in higher end dungeons, you are doing what's called wall-to-wall pulls, meaning from the first wall all the way to the next stopping point, you are pulling every single mob in between. Tip number 3. Just because you have 5 cooldowns up doesn't mean you want to use them all at once. Spread them out over different mob pulls. Your healers will really appreciate it. Tip number 4. Turn the boss away from the group. Boss type enemies tend to do conal attacks or cleaves towards the tank. By facing the boss away, you ensure the safety of your party. Also, as a bonus, you open up the rear and flank for your DPS positional attacks. Tip number 5. Pick up boss adds. Typically, in lower level dungeons, bosses sometimes spawn add minions to join the fight. Use Provoke to pick up a solo minion, or use your AoE attacks to pick up multiple minions. Tip number 6. Spam your AoE when you have 3 or more mobs attacking you. All tanks will have an AoE rotation, so make sure you're not using single target when you have 3 or more mobs on top of you. Tip number 7. Ready check plus countdown. When you start getting into some of the harder content, before you dive headfirst into enemies, it usually is polite to use ready check. After you have completed your ready check, start a countdown for 15 seconds. 15 seconds will allow all party members to properly prep for the most efficient damage for the pool. Note, you do not have to do this when running dungeons. This is usually reserved for raids, alliance raids, and savage content. You are able to drag the icons from this menu onto your hotbars and click them whenever you need to use them. Tip number 8. Tank invulnerabilities. All tanks have a tank invulnerability that allows them to mitigate damage. The Paladin tank invulnerability is called Hollowed Ground. This is arguably the strongest of the tank invulnerabilities, as it has no detriment and nullifies almost all damage for 10 seconds. The Warrior tank invulnerability is called Holmgang. Holmgang is extremely powerful, but if you're not careful, it will leave you with 1 HP with no way to recover after your 8 seconds of immortality. If you happen to find yourself in a position to have to use Holmgang, remember to use either Thrill of Battle, Equilibrium, or Nascent Flash, especially when you're nearing the end of your immortality phase. It is important to note that if your chain target dies, your Holmgang will end early. The Dark Knight's invulnerability is called Living Dead. This is by far the scariest of the tank invulnerabilities. Make sure you have a healer ready to top you off if your health drops below 0 and you enter the Walking Dead phase. If your health is not restored to 100%, you will die. Typically, you only want to use this if your healers have an emergency heal like XCOG or Benediction up. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at risk and your party at risk. The Gunbreaker invulnerability is called Super Bolide. This is, in my opinion, the weakest of all the tank invulnerabilities. The reason being is because you're sacrificing all of your health for 8 seconds of invulnerability. Typically, you'll only want to use this when you're sub 10% HP, so you're not losing so much of your health. Tip number 9. Start working on remembering mechanics. There are a ton of repeat mechanics as you level higher, and the likelihood that you will see them again is high. Work on recognizing the way an enemy attacks and how to appropriately adjust yourself for those moments. Tip number 10. Don't be afraid to ask questions. This community is incredible, and there are so many people that are willing to help you learn. We want you to succeed and enjoy the game that we love. If you've made it this far, I just want to say thanks for watching the video. If this video helps you, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitch for more Final Fantasy adventures. Until next time, stay safe out there.